Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my podcast on life and spiritual empowerment. This is your host, Matthew Mann. Welcome back, everyone. If you are just tuning in, welcome. Or if you're just listening to the recording, welcome as well. Wherever you're streaming this from, Spotify, Facebook, if you're driving and listening to this, welcome, everybody. I hope you are all doing very well. It's hard to believe that a week has already gone by, and I am very excited to be here and record another podcast for you guys. Um, my podcast, the title is Life and Spiritual Empowerment, and it's more like a genre of addiction and mental health awareness. I've already done two full podcasts. One was an introduction on mental health issues in the school districts across the country, and then the last podcast that was just released last week was on anger. And to today, I am going to be talking about the process of recovery, specifically in addiction, and different things that happen in our recovery that we should be aware of. And I think it will be very crucial to go over them, and kind of share some of my personal experience with addiction and recovery and just talk about what it is. So I am very much looking forward to discussing this with you guys. So let's get started. So yeah, like I said, the title for this podcast is the process of recovery and the little things that happen in the recovery process to be aware of. Um, and so I'm going to go over some questions about recovery, and then I'm going to try to break down each one and answer them, and then we'll kind of spiral into a little bit more of addiction. So overall, the big question is, what is recovery? What is it? How can one be recovery oriented? How do we define this process? Is there more than one way to recover from addiction? These are questions that I'm going to go over, and we will explore them one by one and talk about it and try to give you answers. And we'll go from there. So let's start with the first, question. What is recovery? Well, recovery is, when someone has an addiction to drugs, opioids, almost anything that you're addicted to, and you are in recovery from that specific addiction. And I like to define it as addiction is when you are in a helpless state of mind, and recovery is you are no longer in a helpless state of mind. Okay, those are kind of two important things to remember. Is when we are in the battle of addiction, it goes through multiple stages of it, from the very beginning to the end, usually to the very end when people right at the line before they decide to get sober, is what we would call, they are at a helpless state of mind where they have lost everything in their life, or not necessarily lost everything, but their life has gone to complete shit, and there's no future they can see for themselves. It's just chaotic. Unfortunately, the only other option when you use like that, when you're at that stage of helpless state of mind, it's either death or recovery and get your ass sober. So that is what recovery is. It's a lifelong process of, I like to think of it like an analogy of taking an onion and you slowly peel back layers of an onion, one layer at a time. That is recovery. We cannot unwrap or yeah, we cannot unwrap the um onion one layer or all layers together. We have to do it one at a time, because if we did it all together, it would be too much for anybody to handle. And honestly, I think that's a blessing, that God has given us, or just the opportunity of getting in recovery. It's a blessing that we can do it one day at a time. One very important thing to remember when it comes to recovery is not a race. It is, like I said, a lifelong process. You are always going to be in recovering. Once you are an addict or an alcoholic, you are going to stay a recovering addict or recovering alcoholic for the remainder of your life. It's just the title. I didn't come up with it, but you got people that go to meetings, AA or NA, that have been sober for 50 years, and you'll hear them say, "Hi, my name is so and so. I am an alcoholic." It's because that we are, even if they are 50 years sober, we have to put that title on that we are in recovery, and this is a battle that takes a lifetime. Unfortunately, you could be in recovery. I mean, you could have been an addict for 2 years, or like I was, 4 years. You could be an addict for a short period of time, but once you go get sober, you are in recovery the remainder of your life. I had someone ask me the question, is it possible to kill the demon of addiction? And I said, I have two answers to that. I said yes and no. It's possible to kill the demon, but you cannot kill the recovery part of addiction. Like I said, the addiction is a helpless state of mind towards the end, and the demon is the battles that you are struggling that is causing you to use in the first place. It's not the drug, it's not the alcohol, it's not whatever you're using. That's not the demon. There's nothing wrong with that specific object. It's you inside and what's causing you to use. Most anybody that uses, there's always some sort of reason as to why they started, or it's they've got some sort of trauma that they're trying to bury and they don't want to deal with. That is part of the demon, yes, and then it transforms into an addiction with whatever substance. um and when you get sober, yes, you do kill that demon, specifically that problem that caused you to become an addict or an alcoholic in the first place, of dealing with those feelings and emotions head on. However, being in recovery is a lifelong process, like I said. So that is still part of a demon, but not necessarily the demon itself, if that makes sense. It's kind of like the residual effects of it, because our minds are wired, the wires in our brain are fucked up, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to reconstruct ourselves and build a new foundation for ourselves and a core. When we first get sober, we build a new foundation. Then we have to build off of that and become the new person that we want to be. And that within itself is, a process of being in recovery. So it's a lifelong process. Um, kind of like if you break a bone or something and you get a cast, I mean, you're not going to be in recovery from a broken bone the rest of your life, but it takes time. It takes time for your bones to heal. Whereas it's similar, but for our mind, it takes a lifelong process to heal and recover. And that's why it's very important to take recovery very slow. I went through recovery about 7 times, or I tried to go through it, tried to get sober 7 different times, and I failed all of those times until the last time I got my grip on it and really understood what it meant to be in recovery. Because when I first got sober, when I very first tried to, my goal was, well, the withdrawals from the drug that I was using last 2 weeks, and then once those 2 weeks are done, I'm out. I'm out. I'm good. Ready to go, conquer life. And I had my mindset on that and said, this is gonna work. 2 weeks later, no, it didn't work. I was sober for 2 weeks, but then I went right back to using. Because I had that mentality of, oh well, I now that the withdrawals are over, my addiction itself is gone. Now I can start using it again. The word responsibly. We all have that kind of mindset. Um, and it took me about 7 tries to get there because I kept trying to rush the process. I did not want to lose the grip of having fun in my life. I was enjoying what I was doing, but at the same time I was in that helpless state of mind, so I wasn't happy. But I just wanted things to go back to normal before I was an addict, and therefore I tried rushing the process. I think a lot of people when they first get sober, they have the mindset of an addict or an alcoholic. Eh, And usually there's three different categories of when you first get sober. There's the mindset of, okay, I'm going to get sober so that way I can start using or drinking responsibly again. I'm sure there's many of you out there that have been like that. And then there's, okay, I'm going to get sober, but I'm going to do it fast because I want to go live my life the way I want to live it. I want to go back to my normal self again. And therefore, I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible so I can go enjoy my life. That's another one. And the third one is, there's no rushing this. There's no trying to become a responsible drinker or user again. That is gone. That part of my life is gone. There's no trusting my mindset when I say that. So therefore, I need to commit to getting sober and stick to it the rest of my life and find new ways of being happy. Happiness is a choice. It comes from within you. It can't come from anybody else or things like alcohol or drugs. Everybody gets wrapped into this mindset of thinking that, oh, I need alcohol, oh, I need drugs to make me happy. Oh, I need to be in this relationship with so and so to make me happy. I feel lonely when I'm without somebody, but when I'm with someone, I'm happy. Or you get people that are workaholics and they live off of being at work all the time. That is their life, and that is the core root of their happiness. But when they come home, they're bored to shit. They want to go work. They don't want to stay at home. They don't want to do anything. They want to go right back to work. There's that addiction set in the mindset there. So happiness needs to come from if within you. If you are trying to find your happiness from other things like drugs, alcohol, people, it's not going to work out very well. And we then get stuck in that mental uh kind of that's it's kind of rewiring our brain, so that mental reconstruction is starting to take place, thinking my happiness relies off of this, it relies off of alcohol, it relies off of drugs. But that's not the case. um but okay, so I kind of went off track right there a little bit, but one of the other questions I asked was, how can one person be a how can one person be recovery oriented, and what does recovery oriented mean? We first need to understand that word before we can talk about it. So this recovery oriented, it supports one's journey towards improving their life, health, and wellness while living a self-directed life and striving to reach their fullest potentials. um, that is what recovery oriented is. And this is a very good thing. And why is this a question? How can one be recovery oriented? I think it's a beautiful thing because I um I know some people that are in recovery, and there's also someone that is very close to me that I love dear to my heart that is in recovery, is newly recovering from alcohol, and they have such a great light and shine in their heart. This person is has the mindset of, I'm in recovery. I've accepted it. I am going to surrender my way of thinking and do the best things I can to take care of my wellness. This person works out. They go for walks almost all the time. I laugh at sometimes me and this person joke around because I feel like they go for walks every single day. But at the end of the day, I'm very proud of this person, and this person is proud of their work too. When they got when they first got sober, they, you know, changed the mindset of, well, I want to actually back up a little bit because this person got sober twice. And the first time around, it was because, okay, well, I'm going to get sober. My drinking got out of control, but now I'm going to get sober so I can start drinking responsibly again. That's the mindset. Like I said, there's three different mindset categories to when it comes to recovery and addiction. That was the first mindset they had. Then when they got sober this time around, it was a different mindset that clicked, because those other two options, they realized that it did not work. It was, I need to get sober or else I'm going to die. Plain and simple. And so this person really takes care of themselves. I always have been very loving of this person, and I said to them the other day, I said, I feel like I haven't seen you this active in months and years, and you just seem so happy, and this person's so proud of their recovery and the process that they've made in their journey. That is what recovery oriented is. It's an individual that is striving to do their best in life. They have to reach their fullest potentials. They understand that, what they did and how their drinking impacted their life was not healthy for them anymore. This is like what I also like to call radical responsibility. I've had a few different videos on platforms about radical acceptance. Radical responsibility is very kind of similar, but it's taking absolute full responsibility of one's action without taking the blame of someone else, or taking the blame on someone else, if that makes sense. And you take those actions that you have committed and you accept it. Radical acceptance and radical responsibility. Radical responsibility is, it's understanding and taking responsibility for the actions that you did. If it hurt someone, if it hurt yourself in some ways, that is what radical responsibility is. You're taking responsibility for the things that you did. And sometimes this can be used, sometimes this radical responsibility, some people may not agree, but this is like the definition of it. I didn't come up with it, but it's the definition of it. When you take responsibility for things, sometimes you're taking the responsibility on for other people as well, if that makes sense. You're taking on the responsibility of someone else's actions, and it's deep. Like I said, it's taking on full responsibility, radical responsibility of everything. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. But um, I think that's very, very important. Um, and so, like I said, this person that I hold dear to my heart, that is 1 month sober from alcohol, is just striving to be the best version of themselves. When this person first tried to get sober a month ago, it was very hard to watch this person go through it, and it, looking back now and just seeing the progress they've made is amazing. Me myself, in in recovery 2.5 years, I think back to how I was in a helpless state of mind 2.5 years ago, and I'm very, very proud of the process I've made and the things that I'm doing. Um, so that is what radical responsibility is, and that is also what recovery oriented is. It's someone that is striving to do the best and to reach their fullest potentials. They're taking care of their health and wellness. They're doing everything they can to grow and build a new foundation for themselves, and that is something to be so incredibly proud of, because people that do that are very, very good, strong people. Um, another thing, another question is that, is there more than one way to get sober? Yes, there is. However, there are two very, very, very important key words to recovery that we often don't like accepting, especially when we are trying to get sober. But these two very important key words are the crucial standpoint of getting sober and how you can start to change your life in a positive direction. The first word is acceptance. Okay. And then the second word is surrender. Acceptance and surrender are two incredibly important words to getting sober. They are literally the foundational words of getting sober. When you first get sober, these things are incredibly important. And acceptance, what that word is you kind of makes sense, kind of like the word radical acceptance. is you are accepting reality as it is without judgment or resistance. Now, you are looking at your past life of addiction, whether it's drinking, using, or whatever habit that you had that was giving you, getting you in that hopeless state of mindset, is accepting the shit that I did that was fucked up, and I accept it. I take responsibility for it. I understand that it was fucked up for me to do that, but now I accept it. Then the word surrender comes in. Surrender is surrendering your way of thinking. It literally is waving up the flags. You are giving up that substance or alcohol forever. Now, I know someone that had this has bothered me a little bit, but you cannot argue with someone that doesn't think they have a problem when it comes to substance use and alcoholism. You cannot. I'll go into that in a little bit, but we cannot argue with try to get someone sober. But when you are right at that line before you get sober, or when someone is deep in their addiction, they do not like those words. They hate it. They disagree with it. They think there's a problem with it. They think there's a problem with the word surrender. They say, "Oh, I don't like it because it pretty much means I'm throwing up the flags." Well, fucking yeah, it does. That's what it means. Duh. There's a reason why you don't agree with it, because you do not want to get sober. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. You don't want to take responsibility for the things you're doing because you don't think you have a problem. You do not think that you have an alcohol problem or a substance problem. Those two words, like I said, are the two key factors of getting sober. Those are the foundational words that get you sober. Without it, if you don't accept it, you ain't going to get sober. But this is the mindset of every addict and alcoholic. They do not like those two words because they think it is bullshit. They think there is a problem with it. They think there is a problem with the recovery programs. Like in AA, like the big book has been around since 1939. And those are two very important words. And the 12 steps have been around longer than 1939. There's a reason why these programs work. But every addict and alcoholic will say, I don't agree with that. I don't like the way they teach it. I don't think it will work. It's worked for over 100 years. So why the fuck are you telling me that it's not going to work? Oh, wait, that's because you're an addict. You're an alcoholic. Your mindset cannot be trusted. There's a reason why you don't think that shit is going to work, because you do not want to take responsibility for your actions. And that is going to cause a problem for your addiction that is feeding your addiction. Because you say, well, if I don't agree with the word acceptance, I don't agree with the word surrender, I don't agree with the programs, they don't work, you ain't going to get sober, because, or they're not going to get sober because they're going to be like, well, there's no other programs out there that I think that work. Do you think getting the word surrender, wavering up the flag, why the fuck, if I am in recovery for 2.5 years, I surrendered. I gave up using my substance. That's what it is giving up that one substance. That's all it is. But it terrifies the living shit out of them because they don't want to give it up. That is addiction. That is not taking radical responsibility for the actions that they are doing. And this, like I said, active users and active alcoholics despise these two words and the programs of recovery. They don't agree with them. They think they don't work. Well, duh, because they're a addict. If you try to get sober, all these people behind you that are setting an example of what a representation of being a recovering addict looks like, or recovering alcoholic looks like, we are the representation that it works. The programs work. If you take those two words, acceptance and acceptance and surrender, you take those two words, the programs are going to work 95% of the time. It's plain and simple. And so, um, this, I kind of lost my train of thought here. However, um, this goes with, the when we are an active user, you can if you are trying to get someone sober, you know someone that you love, or you're friends with that has a problem with alcohol or any substance or any problem with addiction in general, you cannot force them to get sober. You cannot try to manipulate them. When we are when we try to force someone to get sober, we're manipulating them into trying to get sober. But all that does is get them to step further away from recovery in that line of life changing. Someone, or my personal mentor, my life coach, my sponsor, he has been the most amazing person to point out shit like this. And he told me that recently, when people are in active using and they are refusing to get sober by when someone's trying to force them, if you stop forcing them to try to get sober, there is a greater chance of them trying to realize it on their own. They have to get sober on their own. And the way he put it is, eventually these people, their life is just going to keep going to shit. Things are going to start falling apart. You're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your money, you may lose your relationship, you may lose your car, your friends. And then this person says, "Why is my life so fucked up? Why the fuck does everyone hate me? I am so worthless. I have no meaning." My life coach and the famous Mel Robbins that has a new book that is titled "Let Them." This is what it means. Just, I mean, there's many different meanings of the book "Let Them," but for the addictional standpoint, is let them keep letting their life go to shit, because the more their life goes to shit, the more they're getting closer and closer and closer to that shining light that says sobriety and recovery. There is a line there that your suffering doesn't have to last forever. When you are suffering, you are resisting reality for what it is. That's what it is. Remember, all suffering is resistance to what is. And if you think your life sucks when you're in when you're an addict, you think everyone has just walked away from you, everyone hates you, nothing is going your way, that's because you are resisting what is. You are resisting reality. You are resisting the fact that you are an active alcoholic and an active user. And therefore, you are just, it's plain and simple. You are making yourself suffer because you're resisting. But what the famous Mel Robbins and my life coach said, just, and I 100% agree with this as well, is just keep letting them let their life go to shit, because you cannot be responsible for their actions. You cannot put on the weight and guilt of what they do. Okay, it's going to tear you down if you are also in recovery. It jeopardizes your recovery because you're trying to take on the responsibility of an active user that you love, or just someone you know in general, and you try to taking on that responsibility as well. You're putting your sobriety in jeopardy. You're putting your sobriety at risk. You need to separate that line of trying to manipulate your way to getting them sober. It's not going to work ever. It never will. It's happened to me. My sister has tried to get me sober before, like when I was going through the battles of trying to get sober. Her telling me and my family telling me that I needed to get sober. I was supposed to go on a family vacation one time, and I went up. They found out that I was using. They told me to go home and not be with the family on vacation because they didn't want an active user with them. They wanted me to get sober. But you know what I did? I just went home and fucking used. It's not going to work, because people that try to get you to get sober are master manipulators. They will manipulate you in ways that is crazy. But when an active user is so strong in their addiction, they don't care about manipulation. They just want to get the fix. They want to get to use again. They don't care what anyone else thinks. I didn't care. Like, I have so many people. I lost my job. I had many seizures. I've overdosed at work before and went to the hospital. Do you think that gave me the shining light of getting sober? No. I When I got discharged from the hospital one time after overdosing, I went home. Once the minute I got home, I just went used again. It some Like, you just have to keep letting your life go to shit. sometimes, or letting their life go to shit, because there is I like to put this in a fine line so you can understand. You get superhero movies like a lot of the like Batman, Superman, um the Joker. You got the heroes, and then you got the villains, the heroes and the villains. Every single one of those stories that is being told in a movie through a hero and a villain, every single one of them have gone through the exact same problems in life, through the same trauma. Oh, my parents died. Oh, my planet blew up. Oh, uh, I got bullied when I was a kid. There's a great fine line of being a villain and being a hero, of what you can do with your trauma going through life. You can either take that trauma and become the villain and start retaliating against every single person on this planet because you were bullied, you were being traumatized as a kid, your planet blew up, or you have the option to become a hero, take that trauma and do something good with it. Reconstruct it into a ball of learning lessons, a ball of wisdom. Take it. Every single superhero movie has the hero and the villain, and they all have the same storyline. The villain and the hero all are both going through the same exact thing, but it's giving you that option to do what you want. You have two options. You can either take the trauma and the shit that you're going through and traumatize every other person that's around you in the world and make their life suffer, or you can take the trauma that you endured going through life and make it a positive life. Turn it around. You teach people. If you're going through trauma, some people become therapists. Some people, like me, are becoming life coaches. There's so many different positive things that you can do that from when you endure trauma like that. And so, this is what addiction is: addiction and recovery. Addiction is the evil, okay? And then the recovery is the good, the hero, because you are then taking responsibility of the shit that you've endured, and you are taking responsibility and trying to change your life for the better. Whereas when you are an active user and you are in the middle of an addiction, you are that evil character. You are going to use, you are going to do shit that you wouldn't normally do. Why? Because you've endured shit that you don't like. So guess what? You're going to make your body suffer. You're going to make everyone else suffer. There is that option there that is given to us. I think this is a blessing, because this is why most people do become recovering addicts and alcoholics, is because they go through both sides. They see that the evil side is so much more worse and painful. You make yourself suffer when you just continue using and drinking. But then you see, oh my God, I've endured so much shit in my life, but look at this. There's so much positive light up there that could make my life better. Look at all the trauma that I've endured, but I can actually use it for something good. Okay, I might go try that. It's the same exact thing when it comes to hero and villains. Oh, I'm thirsty. Hold on. Um, but um, yeah, the another part of recovery that I wanted to touch on, I think, is so important. We've all done this. Um, and my life coach brought this up to me a while back, and I've had a lot of time to contemplate on it and think about it and what it means, and it's actually just so true. And we're going to break down what it means. And there's um oh, actually, I forgot to talk about, is there more than one way to get sober? Yes, there is. And actually, I'll kind of tie these two conversations together, because they will kind of connect in a way. Is the word relapse. In recovery, this is something that I had to get a grip on. Um, Many people go through this without understanding what relapsing really is. Well, relapsing, what is it? Is in your recovery process, and you go through a certain period of time, and then something happens and you start using again, whether it's for one day, one sip of alcohol, one fix of a drug, you take one pill, one powder, cocaine, whatever, or it's for a whole week, or you just go back in that rhythm. That is what relapsing is. You're doing good in your life by in being in recovery and sober, but then something happens and you relapse. And we all say this, is tell me if you've ever heard this before, or if you are someone that says this. Ready? Relapsing is part of the process of recovery. Have you heard that before? That have you heard that sentence before? Statement? Have you heard it? Relapsing is part of the process of recovery. No, it's not. Now, let me break this down to you as to why I am saying that. Recovery and relapsing, I'm going to take I'm going to use AA, for example, in the 12 steps. You don't have to be an alcoholic to use the 12 steps. You can go through them when you are a substance user. Um, but I'm going to use the 12 steps as an example because it's a program. every every time you whenever you get sober, there's a program that recovering addicts follow or go to, whether it's a rehab program, whether it's meetings, or an inpatient or outpatient facility. You go to church. There's always in recovery, there's always different programs that are in place that are meant to work. And I want to use the 12 steps for example because relapsing is not part of the process of recovery. Now, relapsing is normal. Okay, it happens. It happens to all of us. It happened to me 7 times. It happened to someone that I love recently that just got sober. It happened to them once. It happens. Relapsing happens. And I used to think that relapsing is part of the process of recovery. But we need to slow down and say, is it really part of the program, though? Is anywhere in the 12 steps, does it say on any of those 12 steps, say you are going to relapse on this step? Does it say that anywhere in any program? But I want to specifically use the 12 steps because it's a steps and it gives you the program and the timeline of your recovery. But like I said, recovery is a lifelong process, but the 12 steps are built to give you that foundational reconstruction that you need. Let's just take any program, for example. Does anyone say in these programs, you are going to relapse at this point in your recovery? No, it does not. If you are relapsing, you are pretty much failing the program, failing the steps of the program. Now, this is, I know when people relapse, when I relapsed, relapsing is flooded with the feelings of guilt, regret. You could have had 50, 20 years of sobriety under your belt and then have one split day where you just make the stupidest decision because something happened in your life. You lost a loved one and you just said, fuck it. And you drink it, but that was just for one day. And you say, fuck. I just wasted 50 years of sobriety down the drain, just like that with one drink. There's so much guilt and raw emotions and shame and regret there. But we need to stop taking we need to stop taking the guilt and the regret out of relapsing. Relapsing is normal. It happens. It but if you like when we say to people that are in recovery or just starting out to go in recovery that relapsing is part of the process, we are putting a title onto our sobriety that we are going to walk into sobriety at some point and say, okay, 3 months from down 3 months down the road from now, I'm going to relapse. So what am I going to do in that 3 months? I'm going to be walking on eggshells to make sure I don't relapse until those 3 months. But when that 3 months comes in, oh, I guess it's time to relapse today. Nobody says that. Nobody just says that. I can't wait to relapse 3 months down the road. Yeah. No, that it's not part of the program. Relapsing is when you fail the program by something that happens in your life that is configuring you with that is manipulating your mindset. Your mindset is not fully grown into or rewired. So something you could have had a loved one pass, or you could have lost your job, or in like a school setting, you could have. I mean, I don't know a whole lot of recovering addicts in schools, but there are people that are vaping and drinking in schools. But for this topic, if you walk enter sobriety with the mindset of I'm going to relapse, you are pretty much setting yourself up for failure. Because if we there's only 12 steps in these programs, but let's say there's a 13th step. That 13th step is, oh, look at that, I'm going to do all this amazing work on myself, but wow, look at that, the 13th step says I'm going to fucking relapse today. Well, that sounds fucking exciting. Yippee. No, it does not work like that. Relapsing is when you fail the program in some sort of way, but that is okay. Please don't feel shame when I use the word fail. It was a hard word for me to hear when it was told to me, but it's true. If you are relapsing after 3 months of recovery, being in recovery, and you're following the steps in the program, and then something happens, you take your mind off of that program and you are going to relapse. It happens. Now, not 95% of the time in recovery, people are going to relapse. It this is where we get it wrong, is saying we're going to relapse because it's part of the process. No, it's not. It's a normal part of being in recovery. It happens. But people that are just starting to get sober fail on the first few tries because they still got the mindset of being an addict or an alcoholic, and they haven't fully surrendered their way of thinking to the programs. That is why we are relapsing. We are not surrendering our mindset fully to the programs. When we surrender, we need to give up the entire drug and give up our way of thinking, because when we were an addict or an alcoholic, our mindset is to not be trusted. It can't be. Um, and so when we put the label on in recovery saying relapsing is part of the process, we are just setting ourselves up for failure. If relapsing was part of the process, everybody would be relapsing nonstop. Nobody would be in recovery. Nobody would be sober. There's a reason why it's not part of the program. Okay? Relapsing, we need to get rid of saying it's part of the process. It's part of the program. No, relapsing is not part of the process. It is normal. Okay? It's normal for it to happen. We are human. We are going to make mistakes. We could do all this great work on ourselves, and then one day something happens and we just make a stupid split decision second decision that makes us relapse. But instead of looking at it in a negative way, saying, well, that's 50 years down the drain, or 20 years, or 10 days down the drain, no. Look at it and say, wow, I made it a whole fucking 10 days. That is amazing, because back then I couldn't have even gone a whole 20 minutes without using. It was like breathing air. I needed it to function and to breathe. Look at it and say, well, you know what? 10 days or 50 years is incredible. Amazing. It sucks that I have to start over, but guess what? I have 50 years of knowledge now that I can use to help me prevent from doing this again. But we can't keep saying that relapsing is part of the process, because then it's almost like we're walking on eggshells trying to walk around and prevent ourselves from relapsing. We're on the radar. Our mind is on the radar of trying to look out for things that may make us relapse and use and drink again. It doesn't work like that either. If we are constantly walking on eggshells, we are going to 95% relapse. We need to get rid of that mentality. We need to drop the title of relapsing is part of the process. It's not. Now, let's say you are 20 years in recovery and something happens and you relapse. That's okay. That's I mean, relapsing is never okay, but it's it happens, instead of, if you take the title out of it and say, and if you take relapsing as part of the process out of the title and just focus on your own sobriety and recovery without thinking about relapsing, and then one day it does happen, you're like, okay, you know what? That's okay. It it happened, but let's try again without failing. But then if you say without failing, that's also like walking on eggshells. This is why recovery is a lifelong process. It's one day at a time. For addicts, it's one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, because we cannot think that far ahead. We can't. We're alcoholics. We're addicts. I'm a drug addict. My mindset can't be trusted to think 20 years down the street from now. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for any of us. Our mindsets are still in recovery. So we can't go forward in life thinking about worrying about relapsing. It doesn't work that way. So we really need to drop the title of it and say, relapsing is not part of the process. It's normal, and if it happens, it happens. And then we'll deal with it when it happens. But I need to stop preparing myself to relapse, because then I'm just setting myself up for failure. That's stupid. You want to set yourself up for success. This is where the recovery oriented comes into place. You get people that are just focusing on their health and wellness and their well-being and trying to rebuild themselves. They're building a new structure for themselves. We need to be more recovery oriented instead of focusing on the worries of relapsing as part of the process. Okay. um so is there more than one way to get sober, or is there more than one way to be in recovery? Yes. Now, I there are many different ways of getting sober. You can get sober through the 12 steps. You can get sober through rehab. You can get sober through church or religion. There's a person out there that um, I can't remember his name and how old he is, but he's in recovery from alcohol, and he went away to this very strict religious group. Um, and in this group, they only have 8 steps instead of 12 steps, but it worked for him. What worked for me worked. I went to both an outpatient rehab facility while working the 12 steps naturally through the flow of life, and failing and making mistakes and learning to pick myself up after each failure and growing through the process, not going through it. We need to grow through the process. So the idea of there is more than one way to get sober, yes. This is where I think people that are trying to get sober get scared, because they don't like the idea of, like I said, they hate the two words surrender and acceptance. They hate the programs. They think they don't work, but they're focused on one program. But every program is equipped with the same underlining um what's it um what is it the serenity prayer and the 12 steps. Serenity is built on the foundation of recovery. And like I said, the two words, surrender and acceptance, are the two main foundational words in every program of recovery. There's a reason why people get so upset with it that are trying to get sober, or that are just still an active user. They don't like those two words. They don't like the programs because they're not ready to get sober. They don't agree with it. Well, of course you don't. You don't want to surrender your alcohol or your drugs because you think there's something wrong with it, but that it just means you're not ready, and that's okay. Um, But yeah, every program is different, but they are all attached with the same foundational two key words: surrender and acceptance. If you are struggling right now to get sober, you need to keep those two words in mind: surrender and acceptance. If you can understand those two words, you can't just say out loud, okay, I'm going to accept and surrender myself to recovery. You can say it, but you need to feel it. You need to feel the actions that have led you up to now. You need to uh, before you can accept the word acceptance and surrender, you need to look at your actions that have led you to where you are today. If you are trying to seek help, I'm guessing that things aren't going so well. Okay, you need to feel the emotions, you need to understand what you did in that time frame and accept it and say the shit that I did was fucked up. Okay, Matt, I did some fucked up shit, but that's taking acceptance and responsibility. I'm accepting that I have a problem with my way of thinking. It's not to be trusted. I have a problem because I am currently using. You need to understand those foundational two words. Surrender. If you do not like that word and do not agree with it, you need to remind yourself or remember you that's because you are not ready to get sober. I didn't come up with the two foundational words, but it's been around for over 100 years, so it works. You can ask any recovering addict or alcoholic, they will tell you the same exact thing: the word acceptance and surrender. There's a reason why people that are in recovery are literally um, living examples and the light that shows that recovery is possible. It is not going to be possible until you accept those two words: acceptance and surrender. Taking responsibility and understanding the shit that you did was fucked up. That's the first step. Then understanding, accepting that you have a problem. Shit, I lost my job. I lost my wife or husband. I lost my car today. I lost my kids. I don't have shit. I lost my house. That is looking at it, understanding what you did was fucked up, then accepting it and say, okay, I understand I have a problem here. Let's look over here. Now I need to surrender my way of thinking. I need to give up this drug or alcohol. Okay. Obviously, I need to give it up because what I've been doing before isn't working. People that struggle to get sober more than one time also like goes into the word of relapsing. People that try and fail again, it's because they're not giving the programs a shot. They're not focusing on those two words. They haven't accepted that they're an addict or an alcoholic. They don't want to surrender. They are stuck in their way of thinking. This is very important. When you are an active user or an alcoholic, your mindset cannot be trusted. I want to tell you like a small story to kind of give you this idea of what I mean here is there was this pilot. I don't know this pilot personally, but I know the story. It's been a while since I've heard the story, so I'm going to try my best to remember it. But there was this pilot that was an active alcoholic that was flying commercial airlines for people while having an alcohol problem. And one day, the airline company found out that he was actively drinking while flying a whole plane of passengers and ended up telling him, you are either going to get sober, we're going to bring you to rehab, or you are going to lose your job and you are going to lose your license for being a pilot, whatever. And he did not like either of those. He goes, well, I'm not going to rehab and I'm not losing my job. So one day, the airline company that this pilot worked for, ended up flying him out to training. They kind of tricked him, manipulated him in a way, and said, we're going to send you out to this place for training. Um, and so they sent him out on a plane to go for training, but really it was a rehab program. And when the plane landed, he wasn't flying the plane. He was like a passenger at this point. Um, but when he got landed at the rehab facility, he said, "This is fucked up. I can't believe that my company did this to me. I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to rehab. I don't have a problem. I am not going there." And the people that work for the rehab came out and said, "You're going to rehab. You're going to get clean now, or you're done. You're done. But you are on our rehab. You are in our rehab facility now. So now we are in charge." And they eventually admitted him into the rehab facility. And for days on end, this pilot was adamant about getting out of rehab. He was like, "I'm getting out of here. You guys can't keep me here. I have no problem. I am gonna go fly the planes to the best of my ability." And he kept getting madder and madder because nobody that worked there was listening to him. They kept saying, "No, you're not. You are staying in rehab. You are staying here until those 30 days are up. You are going to get sober here. We are not letting you go." And he kept getting madder and madder and madder about these people that worked at the rehab facility and said, "Why the fuck are you keeping me here? I have my own free will. I have the right to leave. If I don't want to get sober, I don't have to because I don't have a problem." And he just kept complaining and complaining, and nobody would listen to him. Nobody listened to him. And eventually he asked one of the workers there, the nurses, and says, "Why the fuck aren't you guys listening to me? I said I don't want to be at this rehab facility. I'm getting out of here." He goes, "Sir, you know why we're not listening to you? Because you are an active alcoholic. Your mindset is to not be trusted. You may say that you don't want to go rehab here and you're going to go get sober somewhere else and you're going to go live a better life. No, you're not. Your mindset cannot be trusted. You are an active alcoholic. The company that you work for sent you here to get sober." And he was like, "Well, you can't keep me here. I have my own free will." And they said, "Yeah, you're right. You do have your own free will, but you're not in the active mindset right now. You are not in a rational mindset. You are threatening us. You are doing some terrible things. You cannot be trusted. You have the mindset of an alcoholic. So therefore, we're not releasing you. Because if the moment we release you, the more that means the airline company is responsible for what any problems that pilot did. If that plane crashed, if he was under the influence during a flight, the company would have been held responsible. So they had the duty to active duty responsibility to send him to a rehab and have him get sober there, or he was done. And so this is like an idea or like an example of when we are in active using or drinking, we think we have no problem. We think our way is our way is our way and everybody else's way doesn't work. There's someone I know that just has been bugging the living daylights out of me lately because they've got the mindset of an addict, alcoholic, and trying to reason with them just doesn't get anywhere. And it it I keep reminding myself and saying, "Hey, this person is an active alcoholic. Everything that he says to me is going in at one ear and out the other. I cannot trust a word he says because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. His life is literally going to shit right now. And I'm over here life coaching for people, doing podcasts, have a website. I'm doing my own shit 2.5 years in recovery. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't need some active user and active alcoholic telling me how to get sober and do my business." That kind of goes with like the saying, or not the saying, but it's just to get you to understand that the mindset of an active alcoholic and user cannot be trusted. They could say they're going to go get sober this weekend, they're going to stop drinking this weekend, they're going to stop doing this, they're going to get better. They can keep saying that, but you have to understand, addicts lie, alcoholics lie. When you are an active user, you're going to lie your teeth off. So don't trust anything they say. They could say they're going to get sober, but they're not going to mean it. Like we have, it's the same consistent conversations. Um, which wanted me to wrap up in just a little bit, but I wrote down a quote for you guys that I wanted to read um, to kind of finish this off. And I'm gonna read it to you guys twice, and then I'm gonna see what pause for a minute, and then we'll kind of go over it. And the quote goes, "What you deny or ignore, you delay what you accept and face. You must conquer." Okay, that is, again, what you deny or ignore, you delay what you accept and face. You must conquer. I think that is a beautiful quote. I think it kind of goes to exactly what I was just saying. What you deny and ignore all throughout the podcast of today and the podcast before, I've kept been saying all suffering is resistance to what is. You're resisting, you're ignoring reality, you're trying to fight against it. You think you have no problem, you're denying that you have a problem, you ignore that you have a problem. So that is what it says. What you deny and ignore, you delay what you accept and face. So the word accept and face is kind of like when you get sober, you're accepting it and you must face the consequences of it. You must face the consequences of your actions, but you must conquer. You are going to get sober. There is a light. You are going to do better. That is what it's meaning. What you deny and ignore, so that means you're denying you have a problem, you're ignoring that there's a problem. When you do that, you delay what you accept and face. You delay the fact that you are accepting that you have a problem. You're delaying that there is a light out there, but you're afraid to lose this substance or alcoholic beverage that you've been relying on for years. If you can't see yourself without alcohol for the rest of your life, or uh, any other substance in general, that is a problem. That right there is addiction. If you can't see yourself going or having a personal life outside of the substance or alcohol, that is a problem. That is within addiction. So, the quote, you must, what you deny or ignore, you delay what you accept and face. You must conquer. You must conquer your demons. You must face these emotions head on, dealing with the fact that your shit that you've been pulling is fucked up, but you need to accept it and take responsibility, radical responsibility, then face it head on. When you first get sober, you are going to face all different kinds of emotions. There is so many different emotions out there for when it gets sober. The emotions are all over the place. Your emotions come out, but you must face them and conquer them one by one by one. They are going to be painful. They are going to be beautiful. This is when spiritual awakenings happen, or most of them happen. Is when I got sober, I had my spiritual awakening. There are 6 phases to spiritual awakenings. There's light, there's dark nights, there's painful, there's beautiful moments, and then at the end, the message of it, the passion of a spiritual awakening. This is why people that are in recovery usually have spiritual awakenings during the first 12 months of being in recovery. You're living your life more spiritually. When you get a spiritual awakening, your life changes. There's a spiritual shift, there's an energy shift, and you can feel it. And the spiritual awakenings are such a huge help to helping you get sober and keeping your recovery on track. It's there to help you, but it's also going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's beautiful. um but I think that's why a lot of people that have spiritual awakenings is because they've surrendered their way of thinking and surrendered up the alcoholic beverage or the substance, like I did. And then all this beautiful spiritual energy and this vibrational awakening just came down and just showed me another way of living that is just so beautiful and raw. It's amazing. This is what recovery is. So I'm going to wrap up. Um, but this was a good podcast. I hope this helped you guys in some ways. Um, but yeah, this I'm gonna go deeper into like addiction, but this is the deep dive of the process of recovery and the little things to be aware of. Like I said, what the things to be aware of is the topic or the word relapsing is part of the process. That's something you must change or shift your perspective on. If you were thinking that relapsing is part of the process, you need to shift your perspective a little bit, change it. I hope this podcast helped in that way because it really does make a difference. If you think you have, it's almost like what I was saying in last week's podcast of saying you have the right to be angry. You don't have the right to be angry. If you did have the right to be angry, it's like you're getting a free pass to be violent. This is kind of similar in a way. Relapsing is part of the process. It's giving you a free pass to using again. You can take that pass if you want it, but what are the consequences that's going to follow after? So these are just some things to think about. Um, and I really hope this helped. You can listen to this podcast on Facebook and Spotify. Remember the two important key foundational words in recovery, especially when you're first getting there, is surrender and acceptance. Those are the two foundational words. You are not going to get sober unless you understand and accept those two words. And then the quote that I just gave you: what you deny or ignore, you delay; what you accept and face, you must conquer. Think about that. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. It's been a real fun journey speaking to you guys. You can reach out to me. You can go check out my website at Life and Spiritual Empowerment. And then on platforms, Instagrams, Facebook, and TikTok, I'm on there as well. Um, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast, and I will catch you guys next Friday on the next one. Take care.